Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the HUD OCIO Learning Session. I'm Dr. Melanie Cohen. Today we're going to be discussing the leader within. Leadership is one of the most popular topics for discussion for our show, and we're very fortunate to have with us Dr. Margaret Benefiel, who's Executive Director of the Shalem Institute. Let me first take a minute and introduce you to Margaret, and then introduce you to our panel for today. We have with us Helen McBride from the Office of the Chief Information Officer here at HUD, and Ebony Johnson, also from the Office of the Chief Information Officer here at HUD. So let me give you a little bit more about Margaret's background, and then we'll get into our conversation. So Margaret is, as I mentioned, the Executive Director of the Shalem Institute, and has served as the chair of the Academy of Management's Management, Spirituality, and Religion Group. Over 1,000 executives, managers, and other leaders have participated in her seminars and courses. She's the author of Soul at Work and The Soul of a Leader, and co-editor of The Soul of Supervision. Dr. Benefiel has also written for the Leadership Quarterly, the Management Communication Quarterly, Managerial Finance, Journal of Organizational Change Management, Organization, Personal Excellence, Psychology of Religion and Spirituality, and America. She lives with her husband here in Washington. She just moved 2 weeks ago here to Washington, and she enjoys hiking, cycling, reading novels, and scuba diving in her free time. So Margaret, thank you very much for being with us. I appreciate it, and we're looking forward to the conversation today. So I'm going to turn it over to you to get started.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you. I'd like to start with a story. Years ago, I was in a job that was my dream job. I had wonderful colleagues. I loved the work. Whenever we got together, we had a lot of creativity and energy, and we devised great programs. They were serving people well. We saw lots of transformation happening. And then things started to change. There were financial pressures. There was a change in leadership. There was a merger. And we were asked to do more with less. We were asked to deliver programs that we didn't feel had the quality of what we were doing before, that didn't reflect the values of the institution. And we found that when we tried to talk about these things with the people who were making the decisions, our views weren't welcomed. And I found myself getting more and more frustrated. And so as I tried to talk to the people in leadership in the institution, I would find myself saying, they're not being true to our values. They're not really looking at the long-term goals here. And, you know, I would point the finger and say, you're not being true to our values. You're not looking at the long term. You're not looking at our mission. You. And, you know, you might have heard the saying that when you point the finger, 3 fingers point back at you.
Right.
And one day I looked in the mirror and I said, whoa, I'm not being true to my values anymore. I'm not really looking at the mission for the long haul. I'm not being creative and resourceful here in this situation. I felt like I was losing my soul, like what was most important to me was slipping away from me. And so I'll come back to this story and tell you more later.
Okay.
And then I'd like to go to the next slide, unless you have some questions at this point.
Anybody who watches this show all the time knows that I have questions about every topic, but I'm going to let you get started and at least get started with the presentation first.
Okay, great. So in that institution was experiencing decision failure. Decisions were being made that weren't in the best interests of the institution in the long run. And there are studies on decision failure. Paul Nutt has done a lot of work on why decisions fail. Some famous examples are Nestle, when they were marketing infant formula in developing countries, and then they were boycotted. And then the Ford Pinto, which had safety issues, and they didn't recall it for a long time. And Euro Disney, which was, they decided to locate it near Paris, and they wanted people to stay at Euro Disney, and they built a lot of hotels, but people didn't want to stay there because they were so close to Paris. They stayed in Paris. So those are a few famous decision failures. And why do decisions fail? Well, These are some of the reasons. Imposing decisions by edict, cutting off explorations of alternatives, and overemphasis on rational analysis. So when decisions are imposed by edict, then people don't have a chance to give their input, and a lot of wisdom is cut off. There's a lot of wisdom on the from the people on the ground who are doing the jobs, and that's similar to cutting off explorations of alternatives. And then the overemphasis on rational analysis. The Ford Pinto is a good example of this, where they did a cost-benefit analysis and it was all rational, and they said, well, you know, we'll make more money if we leave it out there, and we'll have to pay some money if people die in crashes, but that's not so bad compared to what we'd pay if we recalled them all. Well, that did terrible things to their image, and so in the long run, it was a poor decision.
So, you know, before we go on, we can have an entire conversation and just move right to decision making, because that's a conversation in and of itself. But these three things specifically that you point out here about the edicts, if you're told what to do, you don't really have much interest in doing that.
Right.
It's not until you're actually actively involved with some decision making that you have a chance to really be part of the ideas.
That's right.
That's really what this is. And the overemphasis, I think, on rational analysis, you know, some schools have want to go to rational analysis, but the problem with rational analysis is that you don't have that opportunity to actually look at all the external factors that come in, right? So I can understand now as you're talking, you know, and I'm going to be interested to hear how your story ends that you just started with, because ideally, some of these things might be okay.
Yes.
But it's when you begin to lose your colleagues, is that when you begin to lose your entire organization, actually, to be able to really come to something. Is that right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. And there's nothing wrong with rational analysis.
No.
It's a part of the whole picture.
Right.
It's just that when it's the only thing, like with Ford saying,
Right.
oh, you know, we'll do this cost-benefit analysis, and
Right.
it doesn't matter if some lives are lost because we'll make more money in the long run.
Right,
Well,
exactly.
other people look at that and say, well, what kind of company are you? And so it's not that these things are wrong. It's that they are not the sole way to make decisions.
Right, exactly.
So when decisions are made, you know, they can be made either out of fear or they can be based in the values and the mission. And fear-based decisions, I think we've all seen them. And that's what was happening in the organization where I was, where people were panicking about finances. And so then, you know, sometimes you can see conversations in organizations going really well. People are thinking clearly and deeply about what needs to happen. And then finances come up, and all of that thoughtfulness and depth goes out the window.
Right.
And so people panic, and they make decisions that are not in the organization's best interest. And also, those decisions can poison the atmosphere in decision making, so that in the whole body, and then negatively influence subsequent decisions. And so when you get into that mode of fear, it has an impact down the road as well. And if you can step back and say, well, what are our deepest values and what is our mission, then you can make much better decisions.
Oftentimes, and what I've found in my own organization is sometimes there are two very good and important either missions or values that are in natural tension with one another.
Right.
The need for security versus the need for openness and collaboration, things of that nature.
Right.
So you have to balance these things, and nobody is going to, the old saying, the best way to know if you've negotiated well is with everyone walks away and nobody's happy.
Right.
Because they've all given up a little something. So How do you balance that in terms of fostering the best possible decision making, but knowing that you're not going to be able to optimize everything?
Right. That's a great
That's a great
question.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because financial stability is important. Fiscal responsibility is really important.
Yeah.
So that does need to be paid attention to,
Right.
and other values as well. So actually, I'd like to give you an example
Great.
that answers your question. So I think that it's possible to be a competent manager, someone who understands all of the aspects of management, including finances, and a value-based leader. And so this is an example from a place called Pendle Hill outside of Philadelphia, an educational institution. And after the financial crisis, they found themselves in trouble financially, and they looked at their endowment, and it had gone down, and they relied on the endowment to a certain degree for their budget, their annual operating expenses. And so the person who was the director at the time said, we need to look at both we need to lay out a plan for addressing the financial challenges, and these are some things that we could do. And she said, she gave all the information so that people knew how much of the budget came from the endowment, how much had been lost, what were some of the places they could cut, would it be possible to cut in ways that wouldn't require layoffs. And so she laid out some of those options to people. And then she said, let's address our core values too. What is most important to us here? And she said, really, this is only a money problem. We have great staff here, we have great programs, we have great facilities, and really, if we look at it in perspective, it's only a money problem, and we can address that. And let's try to think through which of these alternatives that I've laid out are best in terms of what our core values are. So it would have been irresponsible just to say, okay, these are our core values and we're going to ignore the money side.
Right.
No, she didn't say that. She was a competent manager looking at the realities, and she was someone who was a visionary leader and said, these are our values, this is our mission, and we want to make these decisions in a way that's in alignment with our mission and values.
If I could add one other thing to the core values, I think what's interesting is every organization has core values, right? Every organization has core values. And individuals also have core values.
Right.
Not that they're necessarily exactly the same. Of course, they're not going to be exactly the same. But oftentimes, people don't think of those two things together. They see organizational core values and maybe they see a poster of what they are, but they don't think much beyond that.
Right.
And they have individual values, involving their own integrity, but they see how that plays, how their actions play in an organization, but they don't understand the intersection of those two things. Right. And I think that gets to a lot of what you're talking about here also.
Yes, it does. In fact, in this example, one of the things that they talked about was individuals talked about their core values and how those had drawn them to this particular organization and the alignment that was there. Okay. And I've seen organizations that periodically take time for people to talk about their own personal sense of mission, help them write a mission statement for themselves, and then talk about the organizational mission and where do they see the overlap, and talk about why did you come here and why have you stayed, and it's often about that congruence between individual mission and organizational mission.
And a lot of times you don't see that really in organizations because, you don't have that discussion in organizations because the discussions are oftentimes around task.
Right.
They're really more about, give me a status of a task, where are you on this, or here's a new task. And it's not really about, why are you here?
Right.
What does this mission of this organization mean to you?
Right.
How do you sort of inculcate that within yourself?
Right.
And then how does that help you feel a part of the whole?
Right.
Right.
Exactly. And when I talk about leading from within, the topic today, it's about being in touch with those deepest values, your own
Right.
deepest values, and living that out. And leadership, I think, I define leadership broadly. I think we're all leaders.
Right.
We all have our own sphere of influence. And
Absolutely.
so it's how do you exercise leadership there? How do you use that influence? And when you're in touch with your deepest values, you can lead from within and lead in a way that's much more powerful than
Right.
when you're simply focused on tasks.
Exactly. Well, I think we're preventing you a little bit from getting through your presentation, so go ahead. I know you have other slides.
So this is an example from a business called Riel Precision Manufacturing. And they manufacture hinges and clutches. And they decided, it was started by 3 men who left 3M and wanted to start a business where they could be true to their values and also have time for family. And so they articulated their core principles and what their most important values were. And then whenever they had a difficult decision to make, they would use a process, a decision-making process, a discernment process, where they went deeper and reminded themselves of those core values. So for example, early on, they faced a difficult financial situation where their revenues went way down, and they needed to decide what to do. Were they going to lay people off? Was there something else that they could do? And the obvious thing was to lay people off. And they decided, well, let's take this to our discernment process and focus on our core values. And then as they did that and spent time, the leadership team spent time focusing on their core values and looking at this in light of it. One of their core values was to provide a living wage to people, provide employment for good people who had the skills to do what they wanted them to do. And so they said, you know, we could handle this a little differently. Instead of doing layoffs, we're going to propose that everyone takes a percentage pay cut, and we as the leaders will take an even bigger cut, and the people at the bottom won't take any cut at all. And so they were graduated pay cuts for a short time, and they proposed this, and people thanked them from the bottom of their hearts and said, wow, you're not going to lay anyone off. And after 9 months, they were able to bring everyone back to full pay, and because they had the contracts come in, their cash flow problem was solved. And so that's one example of how, and they asked people, they drew on the wisdom of the whole by saying to people, well, where are the places where you see that we could make some cuts and where we could save a little bit of money? And people on the front lines had a lot of good ideas. You know, they were, instead of this decision by edict that usually brings failure, they said, how can we draw on the wisdom of everybody here? And then they were able to tighten their belts a little bit and keep everybody on, and then 9 months later, everyone was restored to full pay.
You know what? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Do you find that getting that kind of cohesive pulling together is easier when you're in crisis, though? When you're in the normal day-to-day and there isn't a crisis situation where everyone kind of tightens their belts, it's a little harder to bring everyone to the table and to reach consensus around some of the day-to-day kind of decisions.
Yes, I think it is. And I think a crisis can, you know, it can go either way. It can go in the direction of the fear-based, where, yikes, we're in trouble, and then decisions by edict, and people get laid off, morale goes way down. Or it can go in this place of, whoa, what are we really about? What's most important to us? Let's make decisions based on our deepest values here. So I think a crisis can wake people up, or it can plunge them into the fear and panic mode. Yeah. And the day-to-day, yes, it is more of a challenge. How do you keep that alive in ordinary times? And
through the ordinary grind.
Right. Yes, I'll give a couple examples. A couple of examples of that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So another example of a crisis time was from Core States Bank in Philadelphia, where there was a merger and they knew that they would have to lay people off. And so they wrestled with how to do this. And Gus Tolson, who was the head of personnel, said, well, I'm going to tell people what the financial realities are so that they know what's going on. And then he talked to the president of the bank and said, you know, I think it's worth our investing in helping people get trained for new jobs. And if we tell them they can stay on for 6 months and we will train them, they'll still come to work every day even though their jobs are over, and we'll train them for new jobs. And so we will be transparent about all this. It's not one of these situations where people get laid off that day and they have to be out by the end of the day and someone else empties out their desk and you know, no, we're going to tell them that they have 6 months and we'll give them this support. And he said, our bank is in the middle of Philadelphia. We have a good reputation. We're going to have a terrible reputation if we lay off all these people and give them their pink slips in the morning and they're out the door by noon. And so it's worth it. It's worth it to invest in this. And indeed it was. And they found that about 80% of their people got new jobs, not all in banking. And they were able to achieve this support for people, and this was one of their values, that they wanted to develop employees and to help people be their best selves, and so it was a really good example, I think, of how to do layoffs when they have to be done.
Yes, and I like that, the transparency factor for that, where you get the buy-in from the employees and you're actually invested in your employees and thinking about the long-term branding of still having relationships even after your employees are laid off, where it's not negative.
Right, exactly. Yes. So then I want to talk about 3 areas here: choosing the path, staying on track, and persevering to the end. I think that all 3 of these are components of leading from within. And I have some subtitles here, and I'll highlight a few of them. So first, following the heart. And I'd like to talk about Madrice Coluccio. Madrice Coluccio was asked to interview at a hospital that was in big trouble. The way she describes it is, she says, the hospital was on life support. And they were in big trouble. They were losing money hand over fist. They had low morale. They had a terrible reputation in the community. And so she went and interviewed for the job, and she said, you know, I think we can turn this place around if we focus on mission. If we say these are our core values, this is our mission, and if we say we want to live this mission out and help our patients know that, help people in the community know that, I think we can turn the place around. And so she said, as she went, she talked to over 300 people in the interview process, and she watched for whose eyes lit up and whose eyes glazed over. And she said, you know, I think there are enough people here whose eyes lit up and who get it about mission that we can do this together. So it's St. John Medical Center in Longview, Washington. And when she got there, one of the first things she did was she moved her office from a separate building that people had nicknamed the White House, where the previous administrator had been. And she moved in where the people were. And she also spent time working on the floor. She had been a nurse originally, and so she worked on the floor with other nurses. And people got to see that she was authentic, that she was an authentic leader, and that she really meant it when she talked about mission. This is how she lived. This is how she worked. And so trust was built, which was, of course, the first step that was necessary in a place that had such low morale and was losing money. And then she said, well, now let's do a strategic plan. And she, like Riel, wanted to draw on the wisdom of the whole got people together from all across the hospital, employees, board members, community members, and asked people what's working, number one, what's not working, and number three, if you could wave your magic wand and make our healthcare mission here whatever you wanted, what would you do? And so they compiled all of this and came up with a strategic plan. And then she said, you know, most strategic plans just sit on the shelf. They never get executed. So I'm going to put together an implementation team, and I will name people, and this again came out of that whole process where people were all putting in their thoughts, and it was clear where the energy was, who had the vision for what. So some of the people she named were obvious choices, like the CFO was in charge of the financial one. Some of them weren't so obvious, like she named a staff nurse to be the one who was the head of promoting pride and loyalty, because that nurse had such a vision for pride and loyalty and what they could do. Well, they were able, with a 5-year strategic plan, at the end of 3 years, they achieved 92% of their goals. And so they had turned themselves around financially. They were in the black, and they had great morale. And in the past, they had, when there were vacancies, people weren't applying and they had to hire temporary personnel. Now they had people lining up for the jobs, and so they were able to fill all the jobs. And third, the image in the community had turned around completely. So she was following her heart, she was leading from within, and she was able to turn that place around.
You know, interesting with the story you just told, because there was so much more to it than just following the heart.
Yes.
Because what she did in this story is what so many people don't do, is reach into the organization and pull people who are not just on the top of the pyramid to solve a problem.
That's right.
Because that's what we do so often, I think, in organizations, is we call on the same people repeatedly.
Right.
And we never give other people the opportunity, who are the staff, who are really doing all the hard work,
Right.
the opportunity to really contribute to that change.
Right.
And that I think was a key piece of this story too.
Right, because she knew that they had a lot of
Right.
information that would be helpful, and she knew that morale would be a lot better if she listened to them.
Exactly.
You know, over the years, they had gotten beaten down because no one was listening to them, and they
Right.
would see decision after decision where they would say, well, that's a stupid idea, and why didn't anybody ask us? We do this work every day. And so,
Right.
you know, I'm sure all of us have experienced those times when someone else makes the decision and we say, you know, we could give you a lot better idea here.
That sort of goes back to the edict a little bit.
Right.
In the very beginning.
Right,
Well, she built a relationship of trust. She built a rapport
Right.
before she asked for input from the stakeholders,
Right.
which made a difference because they saw that she was authentic.
Right. They knew that she would take them seriously. That's right. Yes, yes, yes. So I would like to ask all of you out there who are listening to think about your own sense of fulfillment and purpose in your work right now. And you know, in these examples I've given with Madrice just now and some of the earlier ones, these are people who were living by their purpose, had a sense of fulfillment. And so just think for a moment about yourself personally in your job right now. And thinking on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, what would you say is your sense of fulfillment or purpose in your job right now? And then think about your team. Does your team have a sense of purpose, a sense of fulfillment? What rating would you give your team? And then how about your organization as a whole? You know, all of HUD. What do you think?
And the rest of everybody watching, everybody around the government who's watching.
Yeah,
Think
yeah.
about, these are great things, because how often do we really think about it this way? I think very rarely.
One of the things that makes that question really interesting for me, I'm sitting here trying to think through that personally, and I'm thinking, well, who is in my team? I mean, we have organizational offices, and we have project teams that are working on certain things, and we have teams that meet for certain meetings and certain purposes, and I'm trying to figure out who I would include in my team.
Yes, yes. Well, and you could even think about different teams that you're
Right,
part of.
yeah.
And it'd be interesting to compare what's the
And I think the different teams would have different scores, very
yes.
different scores.
Yes, yes, yes.
We talk about our purpose, and we talked about success as far as, what's our purpose at HUD, which is allowing access to affordable housing. So to me, that's a high purpose. So no
Yes.
matter what goes on around me, I stay centered in knowing our purpose because it is purposeful and it does make a difference in everyone's life.
Right. So speaking of affordable housing, I'd like to tell you the story of Jean Quinn, who started something called Sophia Housing in Dublin, Ireland. And she was, Jean started out as a nurse and lived in Cork, Ireland, and then moved to Dublin. She was doing some further education in Dublin, and she was surprised to see so many homeless people in Dublin. She didn't know that Ireland had such a homeless problem. And she said, oh, something needs to be done about this. So she started to volunteer with an organization and felt overwhelmed immediately and thought, oh, I'm not suitable for this work. She ran into addiction issues. She ran into people who were mentally ill. And she thought, I don't have the skills to deal with all of these people I'm encountering. And she saw people who were, she'd help them get housing, and then 6 months later they'd be back out on the street. And she said, there's got to be a better way. So she started something called Sophia Housing, and she said, I want to address some of the deeper issues. And she got some training. She learned about addictions. She learned who to refer people to. She learned about mental illness. She learned what they could handle at Sophia Housing and what they couldn't handle there. And then she said, I want to get to know people on a deeper level and build community. She said, so much of the problem is that people don't have community. And so they end up out on the streets and they don't know who to go to. And so she started building community in little ways. She would bring people she started support circles where people could share about what was going on with them, get support. She took people to see art. She took people out in nature. She said, lots of these people never get a chance to be out in nature or to see art. And one woman, she tells the story when they went to an art museum. At the end of the day, they were processing and talking about what it was like. And the woman's whole story came out. She said, I saw this painting and it brought this up for me. And that woman hadn't shared anything before that. So being able to get people into different environments and then help them find their way, give them ongoing support when they were in the housing. Thousands of people have gotten back on their feet and have gotten housing through Sophia Housing now. And it was because she dared to dream that something different was possible. And then
Can we go back to the
sure,
excuse me,
this is another
I'm all
housing
choked up
example.
over this. So
Okay.
the daring to dream.
Yeah.
So oftentimes you hear leaders, and I'm just using the word leader because they're on top of the organization,
Yes.
talking about, you need to dream bigger than what we have. We need to, they use the word dream periodically. But using the word dream in a presentation and actually living it are two separate things.
Right.
So how do you go from talking about it to actually doing it? Because I think that's where a lot of leaders would really like to get to, because I don't think anybody is in, I think particularly in the public sector, I think people are here in the public sector because they genuinely feel that what they're doing is important.
Yes.
So they want to harness the resources that they have in their organizations to do better and do more and
Yes.
do things that are very important.
Yes.
But talking about a dream and actually getting people to really feel that and live that are two separate things.
Yes.
So how would leaders actually be able to do that?
Yes.
Other than this example, I'm just
Right.
wondering some ideas you may have about that.
Right, yeah, great question. Yeah. Well, I think it's that combination of being a visionary and also being very practical that really helps. Both the examples of Madrice Coluccio that I just gave in the hospital and then Jean Quinn here are they're able to dream big, and they're very practical people. And a third point is that they're able to enlist other people. They're able to see who else has this dream and the skills to get this done, and they know what their skills are and they know what they need to complement their skills, and so they enlist other people.
But it's a lot about buying into the dream,
Yes,
isn't it?
it
And
is,
that, I think,
yes.
is the hard piece of
Yes,
it.
yes.
I didn't want to cut you
Well,
off, Helen.
no, the thing that reminded me of, and I was starting to think about this when you were talking about Jean Quinn, what she did was she saw a problem, but she started to really invest in it by dealing with people as humans, as
Yes,
individuals.
right, that's right.
And I think too often at work, we have our coworkers and we start to think of them more as either impediments or assets to getting our job done.
Exactly.
Not human beings.
Right.
And when we talk about trying to understand their values and getting them to buy into the dream, you have to treat them as humans.
Right.
They're not just cogs in the wheel. And if you don't understand what motivates them, what's part of their intrinsic value system,
Right.
then you're not going to know how to reach them and to bring them into the dream.
Right.
So you gotta deal with people as humans first,
Right.
and then bring them to where you need them to go.
Right, and as you pointed out, Ebony, with Madrice, when she worked on the floor with people and they saw who she was, they saw that she was authentic, they could trust her, and she wanted to know them as human beings, and then you can go somewhere, right? Yeah.
Yes, and speaking of meeting people where they are, she solved the immediate problem of homelessness, but they were back out on the streets. So she actually dug deeper, and she said, well, let's deal with some of these issues. So she actually went back and got the training. That's an important step.
Right.
Sometimes leaders need to go back and get more managerial training or
Right.
leadership training, but also providing your employees or your resources with what they need as far as the training, the tools,
Right.
whether it's mentorship. So that way you're moving forward versus being stuck.
Exactly.
Or same place.
They need to meet their personal needs, understanding if there's something at home that's affecting them at work.
Right.
That's part of being a good leader too.
Right, right. And one of the things Jean did was she got an outside supervisor outside her organization, someone who could help her reflect, because she did find that personal things were coming up for her. You know, it was hard work, and she'd see people who were addicted or people who were mentally ill, and someone she had worked with, you know, for months, and then she'd find out that person died, and what did it bring up in her? And so she had supervision, someone who could help her look at what was going on in her so that she could deepen and she could get more compassion through these difficult experiences. And then she said, I want everyone who's working in the organization to have this kind of supervision that I have, because they have, for example, one of her staff had to deal with someone who was suicidal and had to do all the practical things, you know, take the person to the emergency room, make sure there was good follow-up, who would be with that person the rest of the day, where would the person go afterwards. And then that staff person came back and she said, well, now, what's going on with you? What did that do inside you? And here's someone you can talk about that with. And so when you're doing this kind of work, you need that support. And so she made sure that everyone in the organization had that. So keeping mission at the fore, and this is another example. Teresa McCoy worked at Grayston Family Support Services, connected with Grayston Bakery. And Grayston Bakery is in Yonkers, New York. Their claim to fame is they make all the brownies for Ben & Jerry's Fudge Brownie ice cream.
Oh, that's important. Very important.
This is a great company.
Yeah.
You know Grayston Bakery?
And
and
those are brownies.
and they say that they They don't employ people to make brownies. They make brownies to employ people. So they are training and housing unemployable people. They started with the business, quote, unemployable people, right? They started with the business, and then they found, oh, all these people, you know, the way they're set up to hire anyone who comes for a job. So when they advertise job openings, people line up, and the first person gets the first job, second person gets the second job, third person gets the third job, and so forth. This means they're hiring people who are right out of prison, people who are just out of addiction treatment programs, people who are homeless. And so pretty soon after doing this, they said, oh, we need to provide some support for people. We're giving them work, and they need other things too. So Grayston Housing got started, and Teresa McCoy was the head of Grayston Housing. So she helps people not only get housing, but similarly to Jean Quinn, she spends time getting people into support groups. She says, you know, people don't know people who end up in our housing often don't know anything about budgeting. They don't know much about housekeeping. How do you keep your house clean and moving forward smoothly, and often they don't have very good parenting skills, and she said we need to support people in all of these areas so that they can stay in the housing and so they can succeed in their lives. So that combination of working at Grayston Bakery, where they had a job, and then having these support groups where they were learning financial skills, they were learning parenting skills, they were learning how to manage their household. That was a combination that really worked, and so they made a difference through the business. Grayston Bakery, the money it made funded Grayston Family Support Services, and then they were also able along the way to get some grants and expand it even more. So they've had to keep mission at the fore all along because, as you can imagine, there are so many things that could be done. They're seeing great needs, and so they have to keep coming back. Okay, our mission is training and housing for unemployable, quote, unemployable people. And they've been able to, with the people who come into Grayston Bakery, about 50% of them stay employed over, 20 years. Not all at Grayston Bakery, but sometimes in other places. One example is Rodney Johnson, who for a long time was the head of the brownie production. And when he first came, he was hired off the street, and he had been dealing drugs. But don't worry about the brownies. He's been clean for a long time. It's okay. And when he's asked, why do you do this work? Didn't you make a lot more money as a drug dealer? He says, well, yes, I did. I made a lot more money as a drug dealer. But number one, I got tired of hiding out from the police all the time. I got tired of being in and out of jail. And third, I have a daughter now, and I want to be able to look her in the eye and say, I'm doing something that contributes to society. And so there are many, many Rodney Johnsons who have gone through Grayston Bakery and Grayston Family Support Services. And by focusing on that mission, they've been able to be clear over years now and keep the business going and keep the housing support services going and make a real difference in people's lives.
What that story reminds me of, and I think we can apply this anywhere in the public sector, is that the task and the function was less important than the mission.
Right.
Right? So that if we apply this sort of thinking to our own organizations and our own meetings that we have, if we focus more on what our mission is at every meeting versus focusing on the task or the function, it would give people a different outlook, I think. Sort of kind of a twist on that weekly staff meeting kind of idea, right? Because I think every organization around the world would have that weekly staff meeting that focuses on the status of your task, with little talk about the mission. But if you switch that around to discussion of the mission, and then talk about how your task is contributing to that, then that gives you an entirely different focus.
Exactly. And there are many ways you can do that. You know, you can have, 5-minute reminder of the mission at the beginning. Or another way is to tell a story of someone who has been served well by your team or by the organization. And, Teresa McCoy could tell a story of someone who's been served by Graceton Family Support Services and the difference it's made in their lives. And that can be a 3-minute story and reminds people, oh yeah, this is what we're about. And the tasks are all in service of the mission.
Right,
Yes.
right. Okay.
So I'd like to talk about practicing gratitude. And Clarina Tolson is the Commissioner of Streets in Philadelphia. So this means that her job is overseeing all the people who clean the streets, the people who collect the garbage, people who are out there every day doing the things that aren't as respected, aren't as enjoyable as some other people are doing. And she is focused on developing people in her department. And she says, we have been able to shift the culture through gratitude. It's easy to have a kind of negative attitude when people come back and say, oh, it was a snowy day today. It was so hard to collect the trash, and people left their trash in places we couldn't get to because there were mountains of snow. And there are lots of challenges that people in her department are up against. And so she tries to recognize people, and again it comes back to getting to know the person, to caring about the people, and to express specific gratitude, and then to encourage people to express gratitude to each other too. So they spend time thanking each other for what they're doing and acknowledging. Sometimes they'll go around and say, well, thank the person on your right for something, or thank someone in this group, in this circle for something, and it can be quite powerful. People don't know that they've been seen for what they've done, and people. Then she says, it's about respect. It's about saying every job that anyone is doing is a job worthy of respect, and we can do it with care and giving our best, or we can do it in a way that is, I have to sweep the streets. What a terrible job. And because she's had this attitude, she's been able to develop people. People rise through the ranks. They've created an atmosphere that is completely different than it was before. And so she's a great example of someone who leads from within.
I had an experience related to that a few years ago at my former organization. I was kind of somewhere in the middle of the organization, and one day I came back to my desk and I found a little note on my desk, and it was a handwritten note from my boss's boss's boss, who had seen me. There had been a general meeting, and I had been just participating, but I had made a couple of comments during the meeting. And he really didn't know me very much personally. I didn't work with him directly, but he noticed that I was making these comments and contributing to the discussion in the meeting. And he took the time to write me a personal note and thank me for my contribution to the discussion, and just left it on my desk. And I don't know that he ever knew, but that, to this day, I remember that note, and I think I still have that note, because I never expected to be recognized for my contribution. It was very minor in the grand scheme of things, but that he would take the time to stop and write that personal note and leave it for me was very meaningful for me.
Yes, what a great example. Yeah, thank you.
And that very rarely happens.
Right.
I mean, I don't remember the last time, really, I got a handwritten note from somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, I have gotten them in the past, but it's rare. Because what that tells you is it's easy to send an email, right? That doesn't take much time. But to actually have a card, or people have cards in their office, to actually write a note to somebody tells them that you are really genuinely appreciative
Right.
of what they've done for you.
You
Right.
took the time to go
And
outside of your
it doesn't
normal
take a
routine.
lot of time,
Right.
Yeah.
but it has tremendous impact.
That's right. And that's the thing about gratitude in general. Either the handwritten note or taking the time to thank
To
someone
verbalize.
in person.
Sure.
Or
Right.
it doesn't take a lot of time. It
Right.
doesn't cost anything. It's an
Exactly.
intervention that can make a huge difference
Yeah.
in a team, in an organization,
Mm-hmm.
without that much effort. Yeah. So I'd like to talk about now persevering to the end, give you a couple of examples of persevering to the end. And Jenny Nelson started a place called Sisters of the Road Cafe in Portland, Oregon. And Sisters of the Road came out of hundreds of hours of conversation with homeless people, especially women. And she had worked at homeless shelters over the years. And as she talked with these women, they said, you know, what we really need is a safe space for us and our children. And she said, okay, we can start that. And they started this place called Sisters of the Road Cafe. And it has, people can come in for a meal. There are no handouts. They either pay for a meal, very low cost, or they work for a meal. And then when they come in, they're oriented. Jenny or someone else would say to them, now, this is what this place is. And this is a place where we treat each other with respect, and where, you know, you're coming in off of the streets, and there's a certain culture out there. It's different in here. There's respect. There's no fighting, but not only that, there's no name calling. And so we ask you to live by these guidelines when you're in here, and if you're not, then we'll come over and talk to you. And so the staff have found that it's challenging. Again, it goes back to that authenticity and that leading from within. How do they maintain that human connection, especially when a fight breaks out or when name calling starts? And so they have decided that they will practice, they call it rehearsing nonviolence. They do role plays among the staff, and they say, okay, so suppose somebody comes in and starts a fight with somebody and we have to intervene. What are we going to do? And the first thing that comes up, of course, is fear, and then being reactive or just saying you have to get out, you know. And how do we keep that human connection with the person even when we're saying this behavior is not acceptable? So they do role plays and they rehearse nonviolence, and they find that in doing that, they're able to break that cycle of violence. If they just are reactive and kick people out, respond in anger, that perpetuates the cycle of violence. But when they can have that human-to-human connection, and say, sometimes they do have to ask people to leave, and they say, you know, you can come back, another day is a new day, come back when you've thought about this and you're able to come in and abide by our guidelines. And they've seen real transformation in people, and great community building. And it's just a little cafe. Anyone can come there, and some people have come over the years, even when they've gotten back on their feet and gotten housing, they still come back because it was such an important part of their lives.
And you know, I think that's one of the things that we often find missing in our interactions at work. You're going to find as you go through your day that people make decisions you don't like,
Right.
that people make choices you don't like, that there's things that go on that you don't care for. But you have to be able to separate the action, the task, the thing that is bothering you from the people. You can still
Right.
appreciate and value the people,
Right.
even if you don't like the decisions they're
Right.
making.
Right.
And it's so much when we kind of personalize, that person is just always making terrible decisions, and they're just a waste of space.
Right.
You know, and that's what promulgates this bad environment at
Right,
work that
right.
makes things counterproductive.
Right.
We personalize these things, but we have to be able to say, this is a good individual. I have no problem with you as a person. I'm glad you're here. We're both working toward this mission. I may not like the decision you made. I may not like the work you're doing today, but we can deal with that.
Right. So I'd like to go back to my story. And so, you know, there I was in this situation where these three fingers were pointing back at me, and I was saying, whoa, I've lost my sense of mission and values, and I'm not being creative or resourceful anymore. I feel like I'm losing my soul. So what did I do? Well, I ended up taking a leave of absence for a while and doing something else. And during that time, I asked a small group of people to meet with me. I said, can you meet with me 4 times over these 9 months? And just talk about what is really important and listen deeply to what's stirring in me and what I feel is what I'm called to do in this world. And at first I just needed some healing, and they helped me see that, and they helped me think about how to get that. And then after I experienced some healing months later, the question was more, okay, now, did I experience that healing so I can go back into that situation and bring more positive energy, or did I experience that healing so I could take it somewhere else now? And I ended up going back just part-time and doing some other work, and that way I could go in and bring that positive energy, be constructive, and not get sucked in to all of the things that were going on there. And I'm happy to say that that particular institution has turned around and is doing great things now. And you know, all of us individually and organizationally have our ups and downs and ebbs and flows. So that group was very helpful to me in looking at those things and reminding me, yeah, you do have a mission, a purpose, and let's think about where you can best live that out. And so I want to think about.
And we only have, unfortunately, I can't believe the hour's almost over.
Yeah.
So let's do this if we can. If we can just sort of, I hate to even say this, just sort of wrap your key ideas here.
Yes.
Because I think we could talk about this a lot longer,
Yes.
and hopefully maybe in the future you'll be able to come back and be a guest for
Great,
us. So.
great. So think about your organization, how you can enliven the sense of purpose in your organization. First, I think it's important to remember that you are empowered. You do have influence, and so look for those places where you can bring this up and where you can make a difference. And second, listen for purpose. Listen to the people around you who has a sense of purpose. Sometimes pride in their work can show that somebody has a sense of purpose. Or complaining can. You know, complaining, if you get behind the complaints, they show a sense of purpose. Well, you can say, well, what is it that you really want? So help people turn around the complaining. Don't go it alone. Look for other people who also have a sense of purpose. And then patience in peril. Sometimes it's in those times that are the hardest that, you know, the crisis can be a time, an opportunity for looking at what the deepest values are. And so I'd like to invite everyone who's listening to think about a commitment you'd like to make. First, you might want to go back to your fulfillment purpose score. You gave yourself, your team, and your organization a score. Is there something you'd like to do there? Maybe to commit to your team that you're going to help them think about this. Or commit to yourself that you want to be more in touch with your purpose. Or how about following the heart, daring to dream, staying in touch with the mission, gratitude, breaking the cycle of violence? Is there something there you'd like to commit to? And then maybe the enlivening of the organizational purpose that I just talked about. Would that be something you'd like to focus on? So make a commitment to take this forward.
Well, great. I mean, I'm just sorry we're out of time. This is really unfortunate. We've just run out of time. But thank you, Margaret, so much for being here with us. I think we all learned a lot, and I know I really enjoyed this discussion. And Helen and Ebony, thank you so much for being part of our panel today.
Yes, thank you. I enjoyed it too, very much.
So please join us next time for the next HUD OCIO learning session. Thank you very much.